time. It's a concept that governs our world. But what if I told you there's a higher clock at work? A cosmic timepiece set by the hands of God himself. For centuries, theologians, astronomers, and mystics alike have searched for patterns hidden within the universe. And now, with the revelation of the Orion Clock, it seems we may have uncovered the divine schedule that connects the heavens and the earth. This clock isn't just any clock. It's believed to align with the sacred sabbaticals laid out in the Bible every 7 years, a moment marked not just in scripture but in the stars themselves. Could it be that God has left us a blueprint, hidden in plain sight, showing how time unfolds in perfect order? In the Bible, time is not just a series of days or years, it's a sacred rhythm, a divine cycle set by the Creator. One of the most significant of these cycles is the sabbatical year, a 7-year period of rest and renewal, laid out in the book of Leviticus. In Leviticus 25:4, God commands, "In the 7th year the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards." This wasn't merely agricultural advice. It was a spiritual directive, marking time in a way that connected heaven and earth. But what if these sabbaticals hold deeper meaning than we realize? What if they are not just about rest, but about aligning ourselves with God's divine timing? Let's go back to one of the most pivotal moments in history, the beginning of Jesus' ministry. In Luke 4:19, Jesus stands in the synagogue and declares, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. This wasn't just any year, it was a Jubilee year, a sacred time of release and restoration that occurred after 7 cycles of 7 sabbatical years. According to Leviticus 25:10, consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. Jesus' proclamation is believed to have taken place around 29 AD, a moment marking the beginning of a new sabbatical cycle. From that point onward, these 7-year cycles continued, stretching across history like invisible threads. The Bible doesn't just give us stories, it gives us a cosmic calendar, a way to align human history with divine intention. According to this timeline, the year 34 AD was another sabbatical year. It marked a significant event, the final year of Jesus' ministry and the stoning of Stephen, as recorded in Acts 7:59-60, a moment that ignited the spread of Christianity beyond the Jewish community. As we explore these cycles, a pattern emerges. We see the same 7-year intervals, over and over, showing us that history, biblical history, unfolds in perfect synchronization with this divine sabbatical rhythm. It's no coincidence, it's a blueprint. But here's where things get even more intriguing. These same cycles don't just govern history, they govern the cosmos. They reveal something far larger than we ever expected, a divine clock that ticks not just for the Earth, but for the entire universe. And at the center of this cosmic cycle, the constellation of Orion, a marker in the heavens, moving in harmony with these sabbatical years. We've talked about the sacred rhythms of time found in the Bible, the sabbatical cycles that mark every 7th year. But what if these cycles are not only spiritual markers on Earth? What if they extend beyond our world and into the very cosmos? That's where the Orion Clock theory comes in. A theory suggesting that the constellation Orion may hold the key to understanding the divine timepiece of the universe. Let's start by looking at Orion, one of the most recognizable constellations in the night sky. For centuries, civilizations have revered it as a symbol of divine power. In ancient Egypt, Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of resurrection. In many other cultures, it has been a symbol of cosmic order, seen as a celestial warrior watching over the heavens. But there's more to this constellation than myth and legend. It may actually serve as a cosmic clock that aligns with the biblical sabbatical cycles. The Orion Clock theory proposes that the positioning and movement of the stars in the Orion constellation can be mapped onto the 7-year biblical sabbatical cycle. Each star in Orion's belt, and each shift in the constellation's position, represents a significant point in time, a divine signal that aligns with the sacred years outlined in Leviticus 25:4. According to this theory, the sabbatical year Jesus proclaimed in Luke 4:19 aligns with a celestial event in Orion that occurred in 28 AD. That was the first year of a new sabbatical cycle. Then, 7 years later in 35 AD, another sabbatical year unfolded, this time marking the stoning of Stephen, as described in Acts 7:59-60. But how does Orion fit into this? The stars in Orion seem to mark time just as the Bible outlines it. By tracking the movements and shifts of this constellation over millennia, scholars have theorized that 1844 and 1846, two key years in prophetic studies, also correspond to sabbatical cycles marked by the stars of Orion. Here's where things get truly remarkable. If we adjust the clock based on these sabbatical intervals, aligning the points marked by the elders of prophetic study, it all fits. We can calculate the movements of time, not just on Earth, but in the heavens. The theory suggests that these celestial sabbaticals have been divinely set in motion, and that Orion is the ultimate clock, ticking away the years of God's plan. Imagine for a moment that each star in Orion is a marker, not just of space, but of time, each one playing a role in God's grand design. Just as the sabbatical year is a pause for reflection and renewal, so too is the movement of the stars in Orion, signaling key moments in the divine timeline. As we look at 1844 AD and 1846, these weren't just random years. They were moments when heaven and earth were aligned, when divine and cosmic cycles came together. In the previous sections, we explored the sacred cycles of the sabbatical years, as outlined in the Bible, and the intriguing connection between these cycles and the constellation Orion. Now we step into an even deeper mystery, the possibility that we can adjust what some call the clock of God, using the sabbatical cycles as our guide. But what does it mean to adjust this divine clock, and why is it significant? Let's begin with the idea that the divine timeline, much like a finely crafted clock, can be set to certain points in history. These points are not random. They are moments of divine significance, aligned with the rhythm of sabbatical years. The concept of adjusting this clock comes from observing these cycles, which have remained consistent throughout millennia, and aligning them with celestial movements, particularly those within the Orion constellation. The theory suggests that we can pinpoint when these sacred sabbatical years occurred by looking at both historical and cosmic markers. Jesus, as mentioned earlier, proclaimed the Jubilee year in Luke 4:19, initiating a cycle that we can track. Using that as a starting point, we calculate the next sabbatical year in AD 35. These were earthly events, but they are mirrored in the heavens by the movement of Orion. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. We can adjust the clock to track every sabbatical year forward from these key moments. In doing so, scholars have observed a pattern, particularly in the years 1844 and 1846, significant not only in religious prophecy, but also in the shifts of Orion's stars. By understanding this, we are essentially adjusting the divine clock to align with these critical sabbatical years. The first sabbatical year of the Orion clock, based on this calculation, began in the autumn of 1847 AD, 7 years after the pivotal events of 1846. This was not a random year, but a continuation of the divine cycle that has been in place since the creation of time. The key here is recognizing that these events are not isolated moments in history, but part of a grand design, a design that moves with precision, just like the gears of a clock. By aligning the sabbatical years with the movements of Orion, we adjust the divine clock, allowing us to map out the future sabbatical cycles. These cycles, when understood properly, reveal significant moments of spiritual importance, moments that can guide humanity toward divine wisdom, if we are attuned to the timing. But why is this adjustment important? First, let's consider what the sabbatical cycle truly represents in a spiritual sense. According to Leviticus 25:4, the sabbatical year is a time for rest, renewal, and reflection. Just as the land is given a rest from cultivation, so too are we called to rest from our earthly struggles, to pause and reflect on our relationship with God. It is a cycle of restoration, a sacred rhythm that invites us to step out of the relentless pace of daily life and into a divine rhythm, a rhythm that has been in place since creation. Now, consider the Orion Clock theory in this light. If the movements of Orion are indeed a reflection of God's divine timeline, then the stars themselves are signaling to us, calling us to align with this sacred order. In Psalm 19:1, we are told, "The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands." The stars, in their perfect and unwavering movements, are part of that declaration, a cosmic reminder that time, as we know it, is a reflection of a much greater reality. The sabbatical year also has prophetic significance. In Isaiah 61:1-2, a passage later quoted by Jesus in Luke 4:18-19, we see the proclamation of the year of the Lord's favor, a direct reference to the Jubilee, a super sabbatical that occurred every 50 years. This year was marked by the release of debts, the freeing of slaves, and the restoration of land. It was a time of liberation and renewal, symbolizing a return to God's original design for his people. The Orion Clock theory, then, is not just a scientific or prophetic concept. It is a spiritual call to alignment. A call to recognize that the divine clock is ticking, and that we are invited to move in step with it. By observing the sabbatical cycles and understanding their cosmic significance, we are drawn into a deeper awareness of God's presence in both time and space. It is a call to live in harmony with his plan, trusting that every moment, every year, every cycle is part of his grand design. In a world where time feels like a burden, where we rush and strive, the divine clock offers you peace. It reminds us that there is a rhythm to life, a higher order, and a purpose that transcends our limited understanding. And when we adjust ourselves to that divine clock, we find rest, renewal, and the profound peace of knowing we are in sync with the Creator of all things. So, as you go forward, remember that every moment is part of God's sacred timeline. The stars may continue to move, and the years may pass, but his divine plan remains constant. Will you choose to align with it?